Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtatarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhayacharnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtatarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jainitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Pregnancy of Diti in the evening, text number 40. Please repeat. Praninam hanyamananam. Praninam hanyamananam. Dinanam akritagasam. Dinanam akritagasam. Strinam nigrayamananam. Strinam nigrayamananam. Kopiteshu mahatmasu. Kopiteshu mahatmasu. Praninan hanyamananam. Dinanam akritagasam. Strinam nigrayamananam. Kopiteshu mahatmasu. Praninam hanyamananam. Dinanam akritagasam. Strinam nigrayamananam. Kopiteshu mahatmasu. Would you like to try? Thelma? Would you like to recite? That's okay. Praninam, when the living entities, hanyamananam, being killed, dinana, of the poor, akrita agasam, of the faultless, Strinam, of the women, Nigrayamananam, being tortured, kopiteshu, being enraged, mahatmasu, when the great souls. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: they will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. Purport: demoniac activities are predominant when innocent, faultless living entities are killed. Women are tortured, and when the great souls engaged in Krishna consciousness are enraged. In a demoniac society, innocent animals are killed to satisfy the tongue, and women are tortured by unnecessary sexual indulgence. Where there are women and meat, there must be liquor and sex indulgence. When these are prominent in society, by God's grace, one can expect a change in the social order by the Lord Himself or by His bona fide representative. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshunmetam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansha Kalpataru Byasha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in today's verse we are seeing a premonition, a foretelling of what is to come when these two sons, which are in the womb of Diti at present, when they take birth. These two sons are Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakshipu, two great demons. They're the greatest of demons because they're actually originally Krishna's devotees. So their service to Krishna is to come and act as a demon and to fight with him. So devotees always want to please Krishna. So when Krishna wants to fight, when he wants to have that virya ras, then who better to fight with than his own devotees? So he chooses his own devotees. So the devotees are always striving their very best in devotional service to please Krishna. So if Krishna wants his devotee to come as a demon, then he sends devotees like Jay and Vijay, and they act as the best demons, the most powerful demons, to fight with Krishna. So there's three significant words in today's verse. The first one is Dina Nam, which refers to of the poor living entities. Srila Prabhupada has translated as being the poor, faultless living entities. Strinam, which refers to women. And the other one is Mahatmasu, which refers to great souls. See, according to Vedic sociology, according to how Vedic society is structured, obviously we have the Varnashram system, which Krishna says, Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. He says, I am the creator, yet I am not entangled by this system of Varnashram. So the Varnashram system is there, but also in Vedic culture, it recognizes different classes of living entities. Like here the word is used, praninam. Right? We know that word prani. Prani means living entity. So there is different, according to the Vedic social structure, there's different pranis, there's different living entities within a kingdom who are relatively, compared to others, relatively, they're more defenseless, they're more dependent, and as such, they require a greater amount of care, protection, nurturing, like that. Not only that, but they may also be great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore to offend such personalities brings about great disaster. So here in this verse, we see that Maitreya Muni is telling Vidura that these two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakshipu, they will not only battle with Kshatriyas, right, warriors, one-on-one, the demigods like that, but they'll also commit very horrendous, very horrific crimes. Why? Because they will kill helpless living entities, such as poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. I was speaking, I think a couple of days ago, on Sunday, and I was speaking to another devotee yesterday itself, about a definition for mercy. We use that word quite liberally in ISKCON, mercy. It's your mercy, Prabhu. It's the mercy of Radha Gopinath, Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And we think mercy just means just to show care, compassion, forgiveness to someone, which is true. But this definition that I came across is a bit more detailed. This definition of mercy, it says that when a person shows forgiveness, care and compassion onto someone who is within their care, okay, who is within their jurisdiction, who is within their care, and such a person has actually done something wrong, and such a person actually deserves to be punished. Still, the person doesn't punish that person. That is an act of mercy. Does that make sense? For example, a parent can show mercy to their children. Why? Because the children are dependent on the parents. The children are dependent on the care of the parents. If a child does something wrong, and if a child is to be punished, but the parent does not punish the child, that is an act of mercy that the parent has shown to the child. Similarly, the teacher can show mercy to the student, the boss can show mercy to the employee, right? The government can show mercy to the citizens. It doesn't work the other way around. So in other words, to show mercy to someone, you need some sort of qualification. Now Krishna is fully liable, or he has the full power, he has the full prerogative to punish the living entities who are here in this material world. Right? We are completely dependent on Krishna. Krishna is like the sun, and we are like the sunshine. So what is more important, the sun or the sunshine? Sun is more important, because the sunshine comes from the sun, and the sunshine only exists because originally the sun exists. Right? So we exist only because originally Krishna exists, and we are eternally emanating from Krishna. Now we have chosen to separate ourselves from Krishna, and we have chosen to come here in this material world. So Krishna, as a loving parent, is completely, he has the full right to punish us for doing something wrong. But in spite of that, Krishna is showing his great mercy by sending Shastra, by sending his representatives, by coming as an avatar like that. Of course, it does not mean that there should be no punishment at all. Some small punishment should be there. Like if you look at Manu Samhita, there are things like, for example, if a Brahmana commits a crime and a Shudra commits the same crime, then according to the Vedic social laws, the Brahmana is to be given more heavy punishment than the Shudra, even though both of them, they commit the same crime. Why is that? Because the Brahmana is in a higher position of knowledge. So if he commits, like let's say theft, if he steals something, versus a Shudra who steals something, the Brahmana is punished because he commits that crime in proper knowledge. He's supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. still he commits. So according to the Varna and Ashram, according to the qualities, according to the work of a person, they're to be given different levels of punishment. Same thing with women, with animals. Like when Srila Prabhupada is saying faultless living entities, of course we understand that Srila Prabhupada is referring to animals as well, specifically cows, which should not be punished. And great souls. Such living entities may commit some mistakes, but Srila Prabhupada often says that still one should not inflict heavy punishment on them. So it should be according to their position in society, and their position in society is that they deserve mercy, they deserve care and protection. Like Srila Prabhupada would often quote from the Manu Samhita as well. Even in his purports in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada would quote that, for example, a woman should always be under the care and protection of her guardian. In her younger age, she should be protected by her father. In her youth, she should be protected by the husband. And in her old age, she should be protected by her grown-up sons. Like that. So at all time, places and circumstances, such living entities should be protected. Now, there's a really nice purport in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 8. This is in the Prayers of Queen Kunti section of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just read the translation. It says, "The clever Duryodhan and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthir, who had no enemy. By the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhan were killed by him. Others also died, the duration of life having decreased for their rough handling of the hair of Queen Draupadi." So according to Srimad Bhagavatam, because Duryodhan, Dhritarashtra, and all the people who were there in Hastinapur during the gambling match, right, with the Pandavas, because that situation came to the point where Queen Draupadi's hair was rough-handled, the duration of their life was diminished by doing that. And here in this verse today, we're seeing three different types of living entities, right? Faultless living entities, women, and great souls. In this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada is outlining 5 different types of living entities which should be protected. So Prabhupada is saying in the purport, in the glorious days or before the advent of the age of Kali. So the age of Kali is not glorious days. So the Brahmanas, the cows, the women, the children, and the old men were given proper protection. And then Srila Prabhupada actually lists point by point why they should be protected. Okay, so 5 classes. Brahmanas should be protected, cows should be protected, women, children, and old men also should be protected. Now Srila Prabhupada will say why. So for Brahmanas, Srila Prabhupada says, the protection of Brahmanas maintains the institution of Varna and Ashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. So we learned that according to the Vedic culture, society has a social body, right? So the Brahmanas are the head of society, the Kshatriyas are the arms, right? The Vaishyas are the stomach, because they're creating food, they're generating the food for society, and Shudras are the legs, they're doing the work. Now Srila Prabhupada often mentions that your body can survive without legs if your legs are cut off, or if you have a stomach ache, or even if your arm is cut off. But if your head is cut off, your body will cease to function. So without the presence of Brahmanas as the social head of society, then society will terribly degrade if you don't have these intellectuals. So Srila Prabhupada says the Brahmanas deserve protection because they maintain the institution of Varnashram. Not only that, but in a purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I believe it's in the Adi Lila, Srila Prabhupada talks about the benefits that Brahmanas give to society. For example, Srila Prabhupada says, nowadays, if we want medical health, medical care, if something's wrong with us, then we have to spend thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars, right, to get the proper medicine, to get the proper treatment. But he says, in bygone glorious days, before the age of Kali, or let's say at least earlier on in the age of Kali, the Brahmanas actually used to go from house to house. And they would beg, right? They would do madhukari. They would beg for some charity. And not necessarily money, but they would beg for food. And just enough food for that particular day. If the Brahmanas were given excess charity, then before the end of that day, they would distribute all of the charity. Why? Because the Brahmanas did not want to be dependent on anyone else in society. Because if you're dependent on someone else in society, then you can't give proper, unbiased directions and guidance to society. Your decisions, your guidance might be influenced by the person that you're dependent on. So the Brahmanas were always independent. And they always work for the welfare of society. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that when the householders would give some dan, some charity to the Brahmanas, then the Brahmanas would actually give medical advice to the householders. They would give astrological advice to the householders. If a householder wanted to marry his son or daughter, then the Brahmana would come and he would give astrology, prediction according to astrology. Oh, your son or your daughter is suitable to be married to such and such person. Or, okay, you have a stomachache, then according to the Ayurveda, this medicine is prescribed. So please take this medicine. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada says that the whole population was very healthy, was kept very intelligent, was kept very sober, and all they had to do was just maintain the Brahmanas. They didn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just to maintain themselves. It was all done by the knowledge which is imparted by the Brahmanas. So that is the reason why Brahmanas should be protected. Then Srila Prabhupada says, cows. Now who knows, out of the cows and the Brahmanas, who is more important to be protected? Who does Srila Prabhupada say? Cows or Brahmanas? No, Srila Prabhupada says cows. If you had to choose between protecting a Brahmana and a cow, Srila Prabhupada says we should actually protect cows. And I'll explain the technical point there. But Prabhupada is saying here, in point number 2, he says, the protection of cows maintains the most miraculous form of food, which is milk, for maintaining the finer tissues of the brain, for understanding higher aims of life. So how is it that the Brahmanas come to the mode of goodness? Ahar suddho sattva shuddhi dhruva smriti lambe sarva grantinam vipramoksha. Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse in the purports to his Bhagavad Gita. He says that the Brahmanas can come to the position of thinking about moksha, vipramoksha. Why? Because they subsist themselves on ahar shuddho, on food which is in the mode of goodness. And the primary food, the miraculous food which Srila Prabhupada says, which is in the mode of goodness, is milk. Therefore, we have to protect cows. Cows are given more importance because they're actually supplying the Brahmanas with milk which they can take to come to the position of mode of goodness and therefore render their most valuable service to society. So therefore cows should be protected. And of course the other point is that the cow is considered to be one of the mothers as well, because the cow supplies milk, and one of the functions of a mother is to supply milk to care and nurture for her young. So the cow supplies milk to human society, and we take that milk and it fortifies and strengthens our bodies, and therefore according to the Vedic culture the cow is to be respected and protected just like one's own mother as well. So that is the point about cows. Then Srila Prabhupada says, the protection of women maintains the chastity of society by which we can get a good generation for peace, tranquility, and progress of life. So Nrsimha Prabhu was mentioning this point yesterday. He was quoting the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where it mentions that if the women are not protected and cared for, then as a class they can be contaminated, they can be degraded. And from such a class of women comes forth Varna Sankara, comes forth unwanted progeny. So if we want society to be pious, if we want society to be religious, Krishna conscious, then the women also have to be given care and protection as well. Point number 4, the protection of children gives the human form of life its best chance to prepare the way for liberty from material bondage. Such protection of children begins from the very day of begetting a child by the purificatory process of Garbhadan Samskar, the beginning of pure life. So if we don't protect children, then how can we expect the children to grow up and not just lead society, but how can they lead their dependents and society towards Krishna, towards a goal which is higher than materialistic goals, dharma, artha, kama, moksha? If the children are not sent to the Gurukul, if the children are not educated in Krishna consciousness when they're young, if they don't practice brahmacharya, then how can we expect good leaders in society? Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yad achati sheshtas tat tat evetaro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever acts a great person performs, common men follow. And whatever standards such a person sets, the whole world pursues, Krishna says. And he says, such protection of children begins when they're born? No. When they're in the womb. So the samskar process it's called Garbhadan Samskar, is performed. And also at different points of time in the child's life, different samskars are performed. Like the Namkaran ceremony, when the name is given to the child, or when the child starts his or her education, that is another samskar. The marriage function is another samskar. Right? There's like various different samskars, I don't know all of them. But the last samskar is the antim samskar. Even when someone dies, that is also a samskar is performed. Why? Why do we need these samskars? Just like, for example, if you take initiation, right? You sit before the fire yagya, the guru is there, the deities are there, the fire is there, which represents Lord Vishnu, the Brahmanas are there, the Vaishnavas are there, the holy name is being chanted, and there you are, taking initiation, your guru is giving you chanting beads, japamala, which he has chanted on. You're given a brand new name, a spiritual name, such and such das, such and such Devi Dasi. That is also a samskar. Because after you sit for such an initiation, later on, maybe some weeks, months, years later, if you start to slacken on your habits, right? Like let's say following the 4 principles, if you think to yourself, hey, I don't want to chant 16 rounds, let me reduce it a little bit, it's not practical anymore, then you can think back to this strong samskar which is in your mind. No, I should maintain the standard. I have sat before the yagya. I have promised to my spiritual master, I will chant 16 rounds minimum. I will follow the 4 principles. I have, taken these vows before the deities, before the Vaishnavas. So in this way, samskars are very powerful reminders for us mentally to practice life in the proper way. If we don't have samskars, then we'll take life very easily. We won't follow the proper rules and regulations. And that will degrade society in general. And in point number 5, the protection of old men. So why is it that elderly people, old men, should be protected? The protection of old men gives them a chance to prepare themselves for better life after death. So we see in proper kingdoms in previous Vedic ages, which were ruled by great Rajarishis, saintly kings, a facility was created for the Vanaprasthas, the retired section of society. These forests were there just on the outskirts of the city. So the city gates will be there, and just on the outskirts there'll be forest. And the Vanaprasthas will go and live in these perfect environments, these perfect forests, which are dedicated for their penance and austerity. Why? So that they could gradually cultivate detachment, vairagya, from the materialistic conception of life. And Srila Prabhupada says, prepare their consciousness, prepare their minds for leaving their body soon. Right? And then if one leaves their body in a state of Krishna consciousness, then of course the destination is the spiritual world. Or at least one will take birth If one has to take birth in the material, one will take birth in a devotee family. So such facility has to be offered for those who are in the elderly sections of society. Not only that, but in a wisdom culture, like my Guru Maharaj talks about a wisdom culture, if there are Brahmanas, if there are Shastras, Bhagavad Gita is taught, Srimad Bhagavatam is taught to people when they're younger, then generally speaking, as a person ages, the wisdom that a person gains is directly proportional. So wisdom is directly proportional to age. The same cannot be said today. It is not that just because a person is elderly, such a person is wise. Why? Because there's no spiritual knowledge in society. There's no proper training in society. But in the Vedic culture, a person having gone through the Varnashram stages, a person having gone through the Gurukul, a person having gone through all the samskaras, such a person, when a person ages, they're also becoming wise. And with that wisdom, they're able to give guidance to the younger sections of society. So that's another reason why the elderly people in society should be protected. Okay? So now we've made the point that these 5 classes in society should be protected. But now let me give you examples, just to spice it up a little bit. Let me give you examples of where in the Shastra, these 5 sections of society which are supposed to be protected were actually killed or harmed. You may be thinking, how is that possible? According to Srila Prabhupada, according to the Shastra, they should be protected. But I'll give you examples now where such people were actually harmed or killed even. For example, in the 2nd chapter, beginning of the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, Guruna hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhiksham api haloke hatvartha kamamstu guruni heva bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pratigdhan na chaita vidma kataranna garyo yadva jayama yadivana jayu. He says, Bhishma, Drona, these are elderly men, right? They're old men, Bhishma and Drona. Of course, Bhishma is the grandsire. He's the great-grandfather. He deserves protection. And Arjuna is telling Krishna, I don't want to fight with Dronacharya, my martial teacher. I don't want to fight with Bhishma Dev, my grandfather. How can I taint my hands with their blood? Bhikshamapi haloke. It is better that I run away from this battlefield and take to the profession of being a bhikhari, being a beggar. I do not know what to do. And that's when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. Right? Now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered to you. Karpanya doshopata svabhav. That verse. Please instruct me. My mind is bewildered. So those 2 verses I quoted before were just 2 verses before Krishna surrenders. So, according to Vedic culture, Bhishma and Drona should be protected. But Arjuna himself killed Bhishma Dev. Drishtadyumna himself killed Dronacharya. How is that? We see that one of the first demon that Krishna killed, who was it? Putana. Who is a woman? If you see Ramayana, one of the first demons that Lord Ram killed was also a woman. Tataka, or her name is Tataka. When Vishwamitra came to Ayodhya and he asked King Dashrath, there are some demons who are causing some distress in the forest to all the yagyas that the rishis are doing. Please send your 2 sons, right? Ram and Lakshman. Please send them with me for some years. They are very expert bowmen and they can help please the rishis by killing all these demons in the forest. So Vishwamitra takes Lakshman and Ram to the forest. And one of the first demons that Lord Ramachandra and Lakshman kill is Tataka, who is actually a Rakshasi. She was a woman. And in that fight, it's mentioned that she was hurling boulders at Ram. Big boulders she was hurling at Ramchandra. And Ramachandra was aiming his arrow at her, but then he was thinking, I can't shoot, she's a woman. But then Vishwamitra came, he intercepted Lord Ramachandra, and he told Ramachandra, whether a person is a man or a woman, if they are doing a wrong thing, if they are putting the lives of so many other people in danger, then they should be punished. So here's an example where the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself inflicted, or killed rather, a section of society which deserves protection. Right? So that's old men, women, children. Where in the Shastra was a child harmed? I think it's in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Hiranyakshipu and Hiranyaksha have been killed. Okay? At least that's the context. We know that Lord Nrsimhadev kills Hiranyakshipu, and Varahadev, he kills Hiranyaksha. We've just discussed that previously in Bhagavatam. And then again, Diti, like here we see Diti, she's asking Kashyapa, please give me children, I want children as well. But because they're doing it at the wrong time, these two demons are born. So later on in Bhagavatam, you will see that Diti becomes very upset and very angry at Indra, because Indra, with the help of Lord Vishnu, has killed her two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakshipu. So Diti again approaches Kashyapa Muni, and she says to Kashyapa Muni, first she glorifies him, oh you are so great, this, that, and Kashyapa Muni sort of falls for it. Like here he's not really falling for it. He's giving reasons why, the act should not be performed at such and such time because it's inauspicious. But at that section in Bhagavatam, Kashyapa Muni becomes enamored by Diti. And then when Diti finally reveals to Kashyapa that I want a son who can kill Indra. Why? Because Indra has killed my two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakshipu. Then Kashyapa Muni snaps out of his trance and he thinks, oh no, what have I committed to? I've promised my wife Diti that I'll give her a son, but now she wants a son that, is going to kill Indra. So what Kashyapa advises Diti is to perform some austerities for 1 full year. Right? And it's mentioned that these are like Vaishnava austerities. Like one should worship the devotees, one should maintain proper cleanliness standards, one should eat only prasad, all these things are given. So she maintains some principles like that for 1 year. But Indra, he came to notice that his auntie Diti is performing this, these rituals, these penances, to get a son who will kill me. So Indra comes to the ashram of Diti and starts to serve her. Now you may think, why is Indra serving Diti when her son is supposed to kill Indra? Indra has an ulterior motive. He wants to keep a close eye on Diti so that if she doesn't follow one of the principles properly, if she slightly, because of carelessness or inattention, she doesn't follow one of those principles, then he can say, look, you have failed in your vow, now your son cannot be born, who will kill me. So in that way, Indra always regularly, every day, he used to come to the ashram of Diti and he used to very nicely serve her, but at the same time he was keeping eye. Now it just so happens that one day Diti, because of being too tired, she forgets to wash her feet after eating. And that was one of the criteria, that you have to wash your feet after you finish eating, mouth and feet. Something like that. And she fails. And Indra takes this opportunity to enter into the womb of Diti. And he comes up to the embryo. And he gets his vajra. And he slices that embryo into 7 parts. And this embryo starts to cry. And he says, Maruda, Maruda, don't cry, don't cry. And I believe Srila Prabhupada mentions there in one of the purports that the one embryo, it was cut into 7 parts. And then again, Indra cut each one of those 7 parts into 7 times again. So 49. 7 times 7 is 49. So there were 49 embryos. And Srila Prabhupada mentions it's like plants. Like certain plants, if you cut the part of the plant and you plant it in the soil, then another plant will come from there. You don't need a seed. Like, frangipani trees? We have a frangipani, like the champak, the white champak. You don't have to plant the seed. You can just cut off a branch and plant that in the soil, and another tree will start to grow. So Prabhupada mentions that what actually happened is when Indra cut the embryo, other souls who are there, they came and they resided into the cut part. So that cut part became another living entity. Like this, 49 living entities came. And they're known as the Maruts. Why? Because Indra told them, Maruda, Maruda, don't cry, don't cry. So they became known as the Maruts. And because Diti failed in her vow that she had taken, instead of her children becoming an enemy of Indra, they actually became demigods. So here we see an instance in the Shastra where a child was attacked. Right? Like we say that Indriyari Vyakulam Lokam Mridhayanti Yuge Yuge. It's mentioned, the Paribhasha Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna comes time and time again in so many different avatars. Why? To protect Indra, to protect the Devatas. So here is a situation where Indra has taken it upon himself to protect himself and the demigods by not having a child who would cause great disturbance in society. So that's another instance where a child was harmed. So we talked about old men, women, children, Brahmanas. Brahmanas also deserve protection. Can you think of an instance where a Brahmana was, harmed or killed legitimately? Yeah, I don't know the exact story there. Maybe, yes. But what I was thinking was Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni is a Brahmana. Right? And he came to Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj had just drunk a little bit of water. And Durvasa Muni created this big demon out of his anger. How can Ambarish Maharaj break the fast when I am the guest at his house? He should honor me first. He should give me water first. He should give me food first. He should serve me first. He creates a big demon, and immediately the Sudarshan Chakra is dispatched. And it's coming straight for Durvasa Muni, a great Brahmana. Right? So it's a legitimate case where in the Shastras we see that a Brahmana is harmed because of what he's done. Right? He's committed a Vaishnava aparad. And Krishna doesn't tolerate Vaishnava aparads. Right? So women, Brahmanas, old men, children we covered. And the last one is cows. Now can you think of an instance where a cow was legitimately harmed in the Shastra? I was thinking about this and actually found an example. We see examples in the Shastra where if a person is harming a cow, they are punished. Like for example, when Kali Purush was cutting the legs or hacking the legs of Dharma the bull, right? Then Parikshit Maharaj, he raised his sword and he was about to cut off the head of Kali Purush. So that is an example. Another example is, I believe it's from the 9th canto, Prashadra. He was hired to protect some Vaishya's cows. And I can't remember if he had a bow and arrow or if he had a sword. I can't remember. He had a sword? Okay, he had a sword. And it was the dead of night and he heard that there was a lion or something, some tiger. And he went to fight with that lion, but accidentally he killed the cow instead of the lion. And the morning came and he saw, oh, the lion is not dead, I've accidentally killed the cow. And he thought, what is my future now? I've killed one of the mothers, someone who deserves protection, a prani that deserves protection. So then it's explained that before his death arrived, before he actually received the reactions of this sinful act, he actually performed devotional service, he performed bhakti, and he went back to Godhead. He perfected it. So these are two examples where punishment was due for killing a cow. But where is the example that a cow was killed And the cow deserved to be killed. Well, the only example that I could come up with was in Krishna Lila. There's a demon called Vatsasur. Right? Vatsasur. So this demon which was dispatched by Kamsa, he came not as a cow but as a calf. If we're supposed to protect cows, what to speak of calves? They deserve even more protection. Right? So he came as a calf, and his intention was to kill Krishna Balaram and to kill all the cowherd boys and all the cows there as well. And he started to mingle amongst the calves, and Krishna suspected, he knew, this is actually a demon. So he went slowly and he grabbed the two back legs of Vatsasur, spun him around, and hurled him into some tree, some apple tree, some rose apple tree or something like that. And it's mentioned that the demon hit the tree and all these fruits fell down. And the cowherd boys said, yeah, now we have a lot of fruits to eat. Let's enjoy. Now you may be thinking, this Vatsasur was not actually a cow. He's actually a demon. But consider this. Why is it that Bhumi Devi approached the demigods as a cow? Right? To call upon the descent of Krishna. Because when she came as a cow, all the demigods will think, here is one of the mothers, she's an innocent cow, she's defenseless, she deserves protection. They equated Bhumi Devi to be the cow. So in the same way, we can see that this Asura, he came as a cow. He was acting just like a cow. But still, his intention was different, and therefore the cow was killed. The calf was killed. Vatsasur was killed. So I'll finish with this point. My point is that why are these 5 different sections of society given protection? They're given protection for a variety of reasons. They're defenseless, they may be relatively physically weaker, they may give valuable substances to human society like milk that cows give. But when these 5 sections of society act in a way which is different to their dharma, when they act in a way which no longer warrants them protection, then they're also subject to be punished as well. Just like women are protected because they give shelter and protection to their children. But here we see a case where Putana actually wanted to kill a child. Then she was punished. We see old men are supposed to be given protection. Bhishma, right? He's not supposed to fight with his kinsmen, with his descendants. But he was put in a position, him and Dronacharya, where they were opposing the Pandavas. Take the example of another child who was killed in battle was Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son with Subhadra. He was only 16 years old. He entered the Vyuha formation of the Kauravas, and he was sabotaged and killed by something like 4 or 5 generals of the Kaurava army. Now if Abhimanyu came before the Kaurava army armed with a sword, they cannot say, oh, he's just a child, he deserves protection. No, he's coming before them not as a child but as a Kshatriya, as a warrior. So he's acting in a way outside of his dharma, which warrants him protection. Therefore, he's liable to be punished as well. So the point is that they deserve protection, but if these 5 types of living entities within society, if they act against their natural dharma, then they're also liable to be punished. So therefore, we should also act within our proper dharma, not just our material dharma. This whole class I've been focusing mainly on the material dharma based on Varna Ashram. But we also have a higher spiritual dharma, which is to become Krishna conscious, to serve Krishna, to surrender to Krishna. If we don't do that dharma, then we're also liable to be punished. But I'll finish with a point by saying still Krishna is merciful. And that's how I started this class. Mercy. That even though we are liable to be punished, still Krishna doesn't punish us. Okay, I'll finish there. Any questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu. I don't think so. Like the examples which Srimad Bhagavatam gives is like, at least of Hiranyakshipu, I remember in the 7th canto, it says something like, when Hiranyakshipu started to terrorize, the universe, then women in the demigod planets or on Earth or something, they had miscarriages. Just because they were so afraid of Hiranyakshipu. Someone was saying recently that the nature, Mother Nature, she started giving profuse quantities of all her supplies because she was scared of Hiranyakshipu. So, at least from what Bhagavatam says in these two examples, very small sort of side examples, we can see that they were not at fault, but these two demons were going out of their way to create a really disastrous situation. And that would highlight the mercy of Krishna when Krishna actually killed them. Does that answer your question? At what cost? Yep. Well, that's the cost of, that's the reason why they were killed. Like, that's the reason why the Pandavas were, the Kauravas were killed as well. Like Srila Prabhupada gives the example in his purports in the Gita, the 5 types of aggressors. Right? So the Kauravas broke all 5 of those aggression principles. Committing arson, kidnapping someone's wife, occupying someone else's land, attacking with deadly weapons, administering poison. So that was the cost for their life. So the cost for Hiranyaksha's life was that they were committing crimes like this. And I don't think it's fair to say that the people were actually guilty, and that's why they were killed. It's mentioned here that they're faultless living entities. So the exact answer to your question, I don't know. Karmically, if they deserve to die, or I don't know. I don't know about that. Mm. Mm. So unless the Brahmanas protected, there won't be any religious principles. Exactly this is what is happening in Varna. Sure. This harmony in Brahmana. So there's no one to lay down the principles of the religion. So hence the custom. Yeah. That's true, but the context for which cows are more superior falls within a Vedic society. Right now we're not in a Vedic society. Like the point you're raising, I mentioned that point as well. I said the reason why Brahmanas should be protected is because they're the head of society. That's the point you're raising. And as such, they can lay down the principles which govern society in a proper Vedic manner. Right? So that's the context which you're saying. But the context from which I was saying